everyone. I'm Lauren Albandian. I am the coordinator for ISAR's 2022 Astrology Conference, which is happening August 25th through the 29th. It's going to be happening just outside of Denver in a place called Westminster, Colorado at the Westin. So it's right in between Denver and Boulder. So there's lots of things to do around. And of course, the gathering of the clan will happen, the astrology clan coming together finally after a couple of years away due to the things that we have all been dealing with, that thing that I choose not to name and invoke. But nonetheless, we have all been dealing with in various ways, right? And not to make fun, it's been a very serious thing, but we are so looking forward to coming back together. And so today I'm with my friend and colleague, Anne Ortelee. She's one of 100 speakers for ISAR. By the way, isar2022.org is where you can find us on the website. You'll find the schedule, the speakers, everything you'll want to know. If you have questions, you can certainly reach us through the contact page. We're happy to answer any questions you might have. And so we're going to talk about ISAR, and we're going to talk to Anne about her workshop and her lecture. But I have a question for you, Anne, before we do that. You know, we've been in this virtual space, all of us, for more than 2 years, or just right around 2 years now.
2 years. It was March of 2020.
Yeah. So here we are. We've, ISAR tried to have its, well, of course, it realized soon enough that its 2020 conference was not going to happen.
Right.
And so it, in its hope and aspirations, it shot for 2021. And that did not happen either. It was a wise decision to pull back and to wait and see how our world settled and what direction we were going to end up going. And so here we are in 2022, and we are working towards our artist conference, and truly one of two big conferences this year where people will be coming back together. So how do you feel about that? What does it mean to you for astrologers to really come back together in a physical space?
Well, I think there's a really different energy. I mean, online is wonderful, and I totally love it, and it does allow everybody to access things. But there's a real difference in being able to sit and talk, walk through the lobby. You get in the elevator, people are talking, my Mars and my Venus and my Pluto moon, and you're kind of like, I'm with my tribe. All these people say it, and I know what they're saying. And it is a sense of the people whose books you've read or whose lectures you've listened to. You get to go and sit up close and personal with them. You get to talk to them. You get to have a drink with them. You get to meet up with your old friends that you maybe went through a certification program with, or you were in class with, and you just knew their face on the screen. And there's a sense of homecoming. And I remember way back when I was learning astrology, my astrology teacher, Ken Kimball, was he was my techie teacher. He taught me all the techie stuff. And he said, well, one day, Anne, you'll go to UAC, which is another astrology conference, and you'll spend a whole week there with astrologers. And I remember thinking, why would I ever spend a vacation with astrologers? Oh, like, that just sounds so weird. But then I went to my first UAC in Atlanta, and I was like, oh my God, or goddess, depending on your frame, this is amazing. And it was truly rapturous. A lot of times as astrologers, we're solitaries. We work we do our thing. We talk to our clients, we read our books. Our family understands us, but when you're hanging out with your tribe, your people, your community, there's such a beautiful gift in that. And that's why I love astrology conferences, because they create a sacred space for us to bring our hearts, to be replenished, to learn new things, to shop in the bookstore, to walk out after a lecture and go hang out with the Solar Fire or Avalon Software and say, hey, they just taught this technique, and Madeline and Faye are both there going, this is how you do it in our software. It's such a source of knowledge. And of course, astrology books, like you kind of go, oh my God, there's so many things to choose from. The only problem is they do change their covers. So you have to bring a list
Very
of the books.
sneaky, yes.
But it's magical. It's just magical. And it's your community, and you don't realize how much you miss them until you get with them. And then you go, I didn't realize I missed this. I didn't realize I yearned for this, that there's a longing in my soul to spend time with these people who really understand the magic of the heavens and the beauty of the gift of astrology, and that work to spread that knowledge and that gift and that consciousness through the world. It's just magical. And you get to like touch people. You get to go hang out with them and go, oh, I have an astrology crush on you. I love your book. And you get to listen to them talk. It's so magical.
Just being able to share that language is special. And before I get too far, and I should do this first, which is okay, I'm going to introduce, for those who don't know Anne Ortelee, it's hard not to, but I'm just going to tell you a little bit about her. She's certified by ISAR, AFA, NCGR, also OPA. She has a super busy consulting practice in New York City. She's the treasurer for OPA, IAEA, the International Association of Ethics and Astrology. She's on the board of the C.G. Jung Foundation and lectures at local and regional and national conferences for astrology groups. And she's lectured at UAC 12 and UAC 18. She writes a newsletter, and she Twitters out there to over 70,000 of her followers and hosts 4 weekly podcasts. All right, so that's crazy. You're a busy woman, and has a very successful practice. And having experienced Anne at a personal level of getting a reading, she's fantastic, all y'all. So, and also tough to get into. So, so let's.
But it's also it is, I think, one of my favorite parts of my. I mean, I love all the other stuff, but I really love doing readings with people where I always think of it, Laura, it's like you're at a tidal pool and the tide's gone out and the tide's there, and you sit and you look in the pool, which is the person's chart, and you're sitting having this conversation about what you see and how it works. And, oh, there's a starfish, and look at what's that over there. I just find readings are my favorite part.
I can see it when I can see it and experience it with you as you say it, because I can see the light in your eyes. I can see the smile on your face. I can really see that. So given that the United States has finally, after all this time, Pluto has come back to its place of its origin in the United States chart at 27 Capricorn, and will have the transits of Pluto, has already had one. It'll have one this summer and one
in December.
I should know this because it's my son, so we won't talk about that, but I should know.
It's okay to not look, Laura.
Exactly. So, and the reason I bring this up, folks, is that Anne is going to do a lecture on the Pluto return of the United States of America. So why don't you tell us, just give us a snippet of that, and why it would be interesting for them to come to this kind of lecture.
We have to get up early in the morning, right? So I'm bright and early in the morning. And the idea is we have, your Saturn return. Every 2 years, you have your Mars return. You have a solar return every year. But countries have Pluto, they have Pluto returns, and it's tied very much to a major transformational time in the country's life. Now, the chart we're using is the aspirational chart, the Declaration of Independence, and our founding fathers were Masons. So they had the Masonic code, and they built it into the chart, which is really interesting. And they said, this is our vision of the country. This is what we think we're going to do here. And we're going to send it to King George and tell him to go suck an egg. And then we had a war, and then we founded the country. So this is our aspirational chart, but people use it because it's time. Ben Franklin stopped 12 years after the revolution in England, gave it to a guy named Ebenezer Sibley, who was a fellow Mason, and Ebenezer published it. So that's how, so it was an elected chart, and our founding fathers were elected. They were also surveyors. So they laid the cornerstone for the Pentagon on September 11th, 1941. Most of Washington is laid out in the Virgo constellation because the government's supposed to serve. So as we have the 250th anniversary of the aspiration of our being, what we're going to do here, what's the vision, it's a good time to reflect. And as you notice, the world's a little crazy in the United States right now. And we're all having a Pluto return because we all live here. Laura just mentioned her son's on Pluto. Well, she's a power and a force in the astrology community, and generational. Her mom was, she was, and she runs a school and she runs a conference that's like 40 years old, right? 40, it's old, no offense. But yeah, but she's very much tied to the US chart. And everybody born in the United States or who chose to migrate here has a link to the US chart. So it's going to be helpful for you to understand what the country's going through, similar to when your partner is having a Pluto transit. It's always good to know, okay, they're going to be a little obsessive, they're going to be a little intense, they're going to be a little bad. What's the vision? What's Pluto trying to teach us? And we know when we have a Pluto transit, everybody that has them goes, I never want to go through it again, ever. That said, I learned so much stuff. Wow. And your life is completely transformed. So we know that a country having its big, we know the Roman Empire, 500 years, 2 Pluto transits. The Roman Empire, we declared, sun never set on it for the English, the British Empire. When we said, suck an egg, guys, and then the British Empire started to shift. So we appreciate that we're at this turning point in our culture. We're a pretty young country. You know, Portugal, Egypt, Rome, England, they've all had Pluto, Netherlands, they've all had Pluto returns. But we're new in this format, starting with the country was here, people lived here, but starting with the vision of what that looks like, the United States. So it's a really important time for us to understand our origin story. Natal potential always counts. And what this return says is going to happen for the next 248 years. Not you're going to be here for the whole thing, unless you're a vampire, and you might be, but the vision, what's the vision? What's Pluto trying to teach us? So that's what I'm going to focus on, the return, how to analyze where it lands in your life, and to understand what Pluto is going to ask you to do as a citizen of this country or a citizen of the world, in the case of our international speakers, because watching the United States go through a Pluto transit, they're all going to be watching it. And we have to be aware of like, oh yeah, that's my Pluto. How do I work with it? And how do I transform? How do I help the transformation happen? Exactly. So that's the goal. And it's 9 a.m. So bring a cup of coffee. It'll be a lot of data, a lot of information for you to go home and work with.
Exactly. And I like that. People like that. They like to know how to, not just the idea of something, and ideas are great, and concepts and meta concepts, but how do I use this? I'm having a Pluto transit. How do I use it? And you're having one. And I know you've been really working on, okay, this is how I am going to focus my Pluto transit. Yeah. And when you have a Pluto transit, you don't miss it. No, ever. You don't miss it. So when it comes in, and people always go, am I going to die? And I go, nah, Pluto doesn't kill you. It's like getting waterboarded in Gitmo. He just waterboards you, throws you back in the cell, and you wake up the next day and you're alive. So you're not going to die, but we are going to change. So it's good. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. So let's talk about the Monday workshop, Monday, August
29th. Yes, Monday workshop. We have
several workshops that are happening on, I'm looking at my calendar here. There are pre-conference workshops on the 25th, and there are post-conference workshops for you to enjoy on Monday, the day after the end of the conference. Mm-hmm. And so Anne is doing one of those, and she's doing it on horary astrology techniques, a very popular topic these days that has taken on more steam. Back in the day when I was studying in the early 80s to the mid to later 80s, horary just really, we were more tuned to looking at modern astrology techniques and Horary was slotted to people who were, you know, a little bit more astrologically, I don't like,
Astrologically technical.
thank you very much, Anne.
We're not gonna put any psychological stuff in because there's no psychology with horary. It's
exactly
just facts. And if
it's
you don't want to ask the question, you don't want the answer, don't ask the question. Yeah,
exactly. It's just the facts, ma'am. And so it's a very Virgo kind of thing, really.
Which is why I love it. Yeah,
exactly. So I'm going to let you talk, but just for everybody to know, you know, there's no wishy-washiness in horary astrology, right? And there are very clear delineations, clear rules, and take it away, Anne. Tell us.
Okay. So when I first learned about it, I was like, all right, so like, how does this work? Right. And really what you're doing is you're casting a chart for the question. You know, I want to know what about this. And a lot of times people use it like, where did I lose stuff? Where did I leave my passport? Whatever, you know, the things you're looking for your passport, the trip's in 2 days, and you're like, oh my God, where did I put it? That kind of thing.
Sure.
So I was like, oh, well, that's a very practical methodology. And my astrology teacher was very clear, like, do not ask the question if you don't want to know. It also tells you to be careful if the chart comes with a certain configuration. They might kill you because they're in the path of fire and they're going to get upset with your answer. So it warns you, which is the old don't shoot the messenger business, right? It says to you, hey, they don't know enough yet, or they're asking and it's already done. So they cast a question, should I buy the car? And you go, looks like you already bought it. Well, I just wanted to know that it was okay. You know, so it's a really defined energy. It's a question for a chart for the question. And it's fascinating. I have no idea how it works, but I don't know how astrology works either. But what you do is you
magic, right? It's just magic.
You just learn the techniques
and you do it.
Amaze your friends, and trust me, people will love it. You will get called. You may not want to specialize in it, but I do it all the time, you know, for my friends. People know I do it, you know, find things, and it's really cool. But it also it's very, very helpful in clarifying matters, because if you are the horary astrologer that someone comes to you with a question, you can use it. Now, one of my students, Annabelle, when she was first starting, she was very young. She was 19. And people would look at her and go like, what do you know about astrology? You know, you're 19. And I said to her, well, why don't you do horary? Because there's no question. You just answer the questions, whatever. So she's like, all right. So she started doing horary, which was doing really well. And one day we were on a road trip and I had another student, Aaron, and Aaron goes, what is this question business? Like, how does that work? And I'm like, and Aaron's an Aries. She was former military. And I go, well, it works really well. You just ask, you know, it's a question, chart for the question. So we're on a road trip after the ISAR conference in Phoenix, which was back in, I think, 14 or 16. We're on a road trip going to Sedona, going to the Grand Canyon, a group of us from New York. And she's in the car with Annabelle, and Annabelle's getting texts, answering them, sending it off. Getting a text, answering them, sending it off. And she's like, what are you doing? And Annabelle's like, I'm answering horary questions. So Aaron gets out of the car in Sedona and goes, she made $500 on the ride from Phoenix to Sedona answering questions. I'm like, yeah, well, she's a horary astrologer, you know? And so I'm like, it's a quick, fast, in and out, in a car ride, you can make $500 in 3 hours, 2 hours, whatever it is from Phoenix to
Sedona. You're going to teach people techniques.
I'm going to teach people how to do it.
You're going to show them examples. They're going to get to do some, are they going to be able to do some stuff in class and practice?
They're going to do stuff in class. We're going to cast a chart and we're going to ask questions from it. They're going to learn how to answer questions. They're going to learn how to evaluate the chart, when to be careful, when to be brave. It's a whole list of techniques and approaches to use, because there's rules. It's a very structured astrology. And it makes your astrology so much better when you do it, because you're just like, oh, well, this is this. There's no, well, how do you feel about your mother? It's like, no, this is the answer. And it is pretty bold in that way. So don't ask the question if you don't want to know.
All right, my dear, I think we've given our listeners a great deal of information about what you'll be doing at the conference. Okay, folks, again, August 25th through 29th, Westminster Weston Hotel,
Colorado.
ISAR 2022 in Colorado. Go to ISAR2022.org for more information. And we look forward to seeing you